What if the anxiety you feel isn't actually a reaction to the world around you, but like a physical reflex that your brain fires off before you even know what you're looking at?
Right, like a hallucination you're just confusing for reality. I
Exactly.
mean, that entirely upends how most of us are taught to think about our own stress responses.
It really does. So welcome to your personalized deep dive. Today we're exploring this really fascinating article from Spiral Seeker titled Anxiety is a Prediction, Not a Feeling.
Yeah, and our mission for this dive is to totally reframe how you understand chronic anxiety.
Right. We want to move away from seeing it as like an emotional flaw or, a personal overreaction. We're looking at it as a pure computational error in your brain's prediction engine. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, because once you stop looking at traditional therapy models and actually focus on the brain's physical architecture, well, the whole picture changes.
It completely shifts.
The source uses a brilliant analogy to start us off, actually. So we usually treat the amygdala, the supposed fear center of the brain, like a smoke detector.
Right, it smells smoke, so the alarm rings.
Exactly. But this article argues it's actually more like a weather forecast. It is actively predicting a storm that might never even arrive.
Oh, wow. So it's constantly anticipating danger. But how does the brain actually process that if fear isn't just an emotion?
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer speed of that forecast.
Yeah.
Sensory data comes in and takes a 12-millisecond subcortical shortcut, which scientists call the low road.
12 milliseconds. That is incredibly fast.
It is. That raw data completely bypasses your conscious cortex and hits the amygdala instantly.
And then the amygdala checks that data against your threat priors.
Right, which you can think of as your brain's historical database of past dangers and, trauma.
So it's pattern matching against a historical database before my conscious mind even processes the image in front of me.
Yeah, it's exactly why you flinch at a coiled garden hose before you realize it's not a snake.
Right, the physical reaction just happens first.
Yeah, the actual feeling of fear is just a post hoc story.
Right.
Your highly evolved cortex realizes your heart is pounding, and it frantically just makes up a narrative to explain why you're suddenly sweating.
Wait, I need to push back on this, though. If my amygdala is predicting danger and dumping adrenaline in 12 milliseconds before my conscious mind even wakes up, doesn't that mean we have zero free will when it comes to anxiety?
Well, it can feel that way, yeah.
I mean, are we just totally hostage to this reflex every time we get, like, a mildly urgent email notification?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember you're basically running on Pleistocene firmware.
Right, like caveman hardware.
Exactly.
Hmm.
On the ancient savanna, a false positive, like running from a shadow, it cost you 0 calories.
But a false negative, ignoring a rustling bush that turned out to be a predator, meant you were removed from the gene pool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The system is hardwired to overpredict danger because paranoia kept your ancestors alive.
Okay, that makes total sense for cavemen avoiding lions. But why does the modern brain get stuck? Like, why does a missed Slack message trigger that exact same life or death reflex?
Because in a perfectly functioning system, your prefrontal cortex steps in a fraction of a second later, evaluates that email, and sends an inhibitory all-clear signal back down.
Ah, so it tells the database not a threat and updates the code.
Right, but in chronic anxiety, that error correction pipeline breaks down. The ancient threat signal is so overwhelmingly loud that the prefrontal cortex just fails to transmit the all clear.
So because that database is never updated, those broad, outdated threat priors just stay frozen in place.
That's exactly it.
Okay, so if standard anxiety medications are just interacting with this broken pipeline, how do they actually hold up? It sounds like they don't fix the predictive code at all.
They really don't.
Yeah.
The author points out that SSRIs simply lower the overall volume of the alarm.
And benzodiazepines essentially just sedate the whole nervous system.
Right, the internal weatherman is still predicting catastrophic storms. You've just put earplugs in so you can't hear him panic.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source contrasts those traditional patches with something surprisingly controversial, right?
Yes, psychedelics like psilocybin. And they seem to actually reach the code. Now, we aren't endorsing this, of course, just objectively reporting what the article suggests.
Exactly, just covering the research. So how do they work differently?
Well, psychedelics operate through a totally different mechanism. They suppress what's called the default mode network.
You can think of that network as the brain's autopilot, right? Like the rigid mental space where your ego, your rumination, and all those frozen threat priors live.
Yeah, precisely.
Oh.
By suppressing that network, psychedelics flood the brain with neuroplasticity.
Wow.
They essentially melt down those frozen pathways, giving the brain a temporary window to write a brand new, highly accurate forecast.
It doesn't sedate the hardware, it reboots the prediction engine entirely.
It does.
So what does this all mean? Well, the next time your heart pounds before a mundane meeting, remember that your brain isn't broken.
No, your body just fired off a 100,000-year-old physical reflex.
Right, and your conscious mind is just making up a story to blame it on your boss. It is functioning perfectly for a world that simply doesn't exist anymore. You don't necessarily need more courage. Your firmware just needs an update.
And this raises an important question. If the most rational, biologically sound response to chronic fear is a computational reset, and psychedelics are the fastest, most effective known way to rewrite that underlying code, what does it mean that the world's most effective firmware update is also the most illegal?